Dr. Lisa Martinez stepped off the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive crystal towers of Zarian Prime. The alien city stretched far above the clouds, with buildings that twisted and curved in ways that hurt her human eyes to follow. She carried her simple datapad and language analysis tools, feeling small among the advanced technology that surrounded her. Captain Jake Harrison walked beside her, his military uniform looking plain next to the colorful robes and strange body. Modifications of the alien beings moving through the spaceport. Behind them came Pete Collins, their engineer, and Amy Foster, their biologist. The four humans were the only representatives from Earth at this important meeting. "Remember what we discussed on the ship," Jake said quietly. "They invited us here, but they don't really want us here. We need to prove that humans belong in this council." Lisa nodded, but she felt nervous. For 3 months, she had studied everything available about the Galactic Linguistic Council. The 12 alien species that made up the council were the smartest. Language experts in known space. Each species had abilities that made human communication look basic and limited. They entered the main council building, where the ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. Floating platforms carried beings of different shapes and sizes between the levels. Lisa saw the tall blue-skinned Zephyrians with their 4 vocal cords that could produce sounds no human throat could make. The insect-like creatures called. Insectoids clicked and buzzed in rapid patterns that carried more information than entire human sentences. A Zephyrian approached their group. His skin was deep blue with silver markings that moved and changed as he spoke. "I am Velther, linguistic specialist for the Zephyrian delegation. You must be the humans we were told about." His voice came from multiple throat chambers at once, creating harmony that made Lisa think of a choir singing different notes. When he spoke in human language, the sound seemed flat and boring compared to his natural speech. "I am Captain Harrison. This is Dr. Martinez, our language expert." Velther looked at Lisa with eyes that had no pupils, just swirling colors. "Ah yes, the human who thinks she understands language. How interesting. Tell me, Dr. Martinez, how many communication methods does your species use?" Lisa felt heat rise in her cheeks. "We use vocal speech, written symbols, body language, and mathematical concepts to communicate ideas." Velther made a sound that might have been laughter. 4 methods, how simple. "We Zephyrians use 17 different harmonic layers in our speech alone. We can communicate mathematical proofs, emotional states, and historical references all in a single sound. Your human speech is like a child banging rocks together compared to our linguistic sophistication." A new voice joined the conversation, this one coming from a creature that looked like living crystal. The crystalline entity called Shardake spoke through vibrations that made Lisa's bones ache. "The humans use linear communication. They must speak one word after another, like beads on a string. We can transmit complete thought structures instantly through quantum resonance patterns." More aliens gathered around the human group. A creature with gray skin and large black eyes stepped forward. This was Kex Thul from the Vorthak species known for their logical minds. "I have studied human communication methods. They rely heavily on emotional context and unclear meanings. Their languages have words that mean different things depending on feelings and social situations. This is highly inefficient." Lisa tried to speak, but Kex Thul continued. "For example, humans use the word fine to mean both good and bad, depending on tone and context. How can any useful communication happen when words have opposite meanings? It is like trying to do mathematics where numbers change value-based." On the mood of the calculator, a floating gas cloud with sparkling lights inside drifted closer. The nebulan spoke in frequencies that made Lisa's ears hurt. A translation device on Jake's belt converted the sounds into human language. The nebulan. Collective agrees. Human communication is primitive. They cannot even share thoughts directly like proper intelligent species. They must push air through meat tubes to make crude sounds. Pete Collins, the engineer, stepped forward. Now wait just a minute. Human engineering has solved problems. That's stumped alien science for centuries. Maybe our communication methods work better than you think. The aliens made various sounds that the translation devices interpreted as laughter. Velther's skin patterns shifted to colors that Lisa somehow knew meant amusement and contempt. Your species is good at making simple tools, yes. But we are here to discuss the greatest linguistic challenge in galactic history. The ruins of Ancient's Rest have defeated our best minds for over 1,000 years. What could your primitive communication methods possibly contribute? Shardake's crystal body flashed with light. The ancient symbols on that dead world represent a language more complex than anything in known space. Our quantum linguistic processors have analyzed every possible combination of meanings. The Zephyrian harmonic translators have tested every frequency and tonal variation. The Vorthok logic engines have applied pure mathematical reasoning to every symbol. All have failed. Which is why bringing humans to this expedition is a waste of time and resources, added Kexthul. If our advanced methods cannot solve this puzzle, what hope do beings with such limited communication abilities have? Lisa felt anger building inside her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. Maybe that's exactly why you need us. You've all tried the same types of approaches. Sometimes a different way of thinking can see things that advanced methods miss. The aliens fell silent for a moment. Then Velthera's skin shifted to what Lisa recognized as the colors of dismissal. Different thinking? Child, we represent 12 species with communication methods your human brain cannot even comprehend. The gaseous collective shares thoughts across light years instantly. The temporal speakers can send messages backward through time. The dimensional weavers communicate through folded space itself. What could your simple vocal sounds possibly add to such diversity? A new alien approached the group. This creature was twice as tall as the humans, with 6 arms and skin that looked like black metal. The translation device identified it as Buzz Kith, an insectoid researcher. It spoke in rapid clicks and hums that hurt Lisa's head to hear. The insectoid hive has analyzed human communication patterns. They use only 44 basic sounds to create all their words. We use over 3,000 distinct sound combinations, each carrying precise technical and emotional data. Human language is like trying to build a starship with only rocks and sticks. Jake stepped forward, his military training helping him stay calm under the insults. With respect, we didn't ask to be included in this mission. Your own government leaders decided that human perspectives might be valuable. We're here to help, not to prove anything to you. Help? Kexthul's large black eyes seemed to focus on Jake with something like pity. Captain Harrison, your species discovered faster than light travel only 200 years ago. We have been studying ancient languages for millennia. The ruins on Ancient's Rest contain over 10 million unique symbols arranged in patterns that follow no known linguistic rules. Our greatest scholars have spent lifetimes trying to decode even simple phrases. What makes you think humans can succeed where we have failed? The group of aliens grew larger as more council members joined the conversation. Lisa felt overwhelmed by the different shapes, sizes, and ways of speaking. Every species seemed to have communication abilities that made human language look like primitive noise. Shardake's crystal body pulsed with light as it spoke. Perhaps the humans could help with manual labor during the expedition. Moving equipment, cleaning ruins, basic maintenance tasks. Their physical abilities might be useful even if their minds cannot contribute to the linguistic analysis. The suggestion caused more sounds of alien amusement. Lisa felt her face turn red with embarrassment and anger. She had spent 15 years studying languages from across the galaxy. She had learned to speak 17 different alien languages and had written papers on comparative linguistics that were read throughout human space. Now these beings were suggesting she should carry their bags like a servant. Dr. Martinez has more experience with ancient languages than most beings in this room, Jake said firmly. She decoded the Martian cave writings that had puzzled scientists for decades. She figured out the time-locked messages left by the Alpha Centauri expedition. She even learned to communicate with the energy beings near the galactic core. Velveterus. Skin patterns shifted to colors that meant boredom. Impressive for a human, perhaps. But the Martian writings were simple pictographs. The Alpha Centauri messages used basic mathematical concepts. The energy beings communicate through electromagnetic pulses. Child's play compared to the complexity we face on Ancient's Rest. Lisa finally found her voice again. Have you considered that maybe the ancient language isn't meant to be decoded by advanced technology? What if it requires a different kind of thinking, something that combines logic with intuition, technology with creativity? The aliens fell silent again, but this time Lisa sensed something different in their stillness. Not consideration, but the kind of quiet that comes before mockery. Kextul spoke first. Intuition? Creativity? Dr. Martinez, we are scientists. We deal in facts, logic, and provable results. I've massive exploration ship Starbound Unity left Zarian Prime 3 days after the council meeting. Lisa Martinez stood at the observation deck, watching the stars stretch into lines as the ship jumped to faster than light speed. The vessel was enormous, bigger than any human-built ship she had ever seen. It housed over 200 alien researchers, their equipment, and enough supplies for a year-long expedition. Lisa's quarters were small and plain compared to the elaborate spaces given to the alien delegates. The ship's designers had clearly not expected human passengers. Her bed was too short, the lighting hurt her eyes, and the air recycling system made sounds that kept her awake at night. But she tried not to complain. She was lucky to be here at all that Captain Jake Harrison found her in the ship's library on the 4th day of their journey. The library was a vast space filled with data storage devices from dozens of species. Holographic displays showed information in languages that made Lisa's head spin just looking at them. "How are you holding up?" Jake asked, sitting down at her table. Lisa gestured at the pile of data tablets and image projectors around her. "I've been studying every scan and photograph from previous expeditions to Ancient's Rest. There have been 47 separate attempts to decode the ruins over the past 1,000 years. Every single one failed." "That's encouraging," Jake said with a dry smile. "Actually, it is." Lisa pulled up a holographic display showing symbols from the ruins. "Look at this." Every expedition focused on individual symbols or small groups of symbols. They treated the ancient language like a code to be broken or a puzzle to be solved piece by piece. Jake studied the floating symbols. They looked like a mix of geometric shapes, flowing curves, and patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. What do you think they missed? They're thinking too small. What if the entire planet is one giant message? What if you can't understand the individual symbols without seeing how they all connect together? Before Jake could respond, a shadow fell across their table. Kestu, the Vortex scholar, approached with his usual expression of cold superiority. His gray skin looked even paler under the library's artificial lighting. "Dr. Martinez, I see you are attempting to study the Ancient's Rest data. How quaint." Kexthul's large black eyes focused on the holographic display. "I notice you are using basic human visual analysis methods. Are you planning to solve this mystery by staring at pictures?" Lisa felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm looking for patterns that might have been missed by previous expeditions." "Patterns?" Kexthul made a sound that might have been laughter if Vorthek could laugh. "Dr. Martinez, our logic engines have analyzed every possible pattern in the ruins. Mathematical progressions, symbolic relationships, geometric correlations, frequency distributions. We have mapped every symbol's position relative to every other symbol on the planet. There are no patterns that we have not already discovered and tested. Maybe you're looking for the wrong kind of patterns, Lisa said. This time Kexthul did make a sound like laughter, though it was cold and sharp. Wrong kinds of patterns? There's only one kind of pattern, Dr. Martinez. Logical, mathematical, provable relationships between data points. What other kind could there possibly be? Jake started to speak, but footsteps announced more visitors. Velthar, the Zephyrian linguist, approached with two other members of his species. Their blue skin showed patterns of colors that Lisa had. Learned meant amusement and condescension. Are we interrupting a language lesson? Velthar asked, his 4 vocal cords producing harmonic sounds that made the translator work hard to convert into human speech. Perhaps Dr. Martinez is teaching Kexthul about human intuition. The other Zephyrians made harmonious sounds that the translator interpreted as laughter. One of them, introduced as Rhythmdal, spoke in tones that seemed designed to exclude human hearing. We have been discussing the human delegation in our quarters. It is fascinating how your species believes that ignorance might succeed where knowledge has failed. Lisa stood up, her patience finally running out. What exactly do you mean by that? Simple, Dr. Martinez, Velthar replied, his skin patterns shifting to colors that meant obvious explanation. You have admitted that you know less about advanced linguistics than any being on this ship. You have no quantum processors, no harmonic analyzers, no temporal resonance chambers. You have only your basic human brain and simple tools. Yet you believe you can solve a mystery that has defeated the greatest minds in galactic civilization. This is classic human arrogance, added Rhythmdal. Your species always believes it can achieve the impossible through determination and luck. It is entertaining, but ultimately futile. Kexthul nodded agreement. The humans remind me of children who believe they can fly by flapping their arms fast enough. Admirable optimism, but ignorant of physical reality. Lisa felt heat rising in her cheeks. Maybe fresh eyes can see things that experienced ones miss. Maybe your advanced methods are part of the problem. The aliens exchanged looks that needed no translation. Velthar's skin showed colors that meant pity mixed with irritation. Dr. Martinez, we appreciate your enthusiasm. But this expedition represents the most advanced linguistic analysis ever attempted. We have brought processing power equivalent to the entire computational capacity of small planets. We have translation matrices that can decode any language that has ever existed. We have scholars whose individual intellects surpass your entire species' collective knowledge. And yet none of it has worked, Lisa said quietly. The library fell silent. Other alien researchers at nearby tables turned to watch the confrontation. Lisa realized she had just challenged not just these few aliens, but the fundamental assumption that advanced technology and superior intellect were the only tools needed to solve any problem. Kexthul, voice became even colder. Dr. Martinez, the ruins on Ancient's Rest represent a language created by beings far more advanced than any current galactic species. If our best methods cannot decode their messages, it is because the language is beyond current understanding, not because our methods are inadequate. Or maybe, Lisa said, her voice growing stronger, the ancient beings who built those ruins weren't trying to show off how smart they were. Maybe they were trying to communicate something that requires more than just intelligence to understand. Velthar. Skin patterns shifted through several rapid color changes that indicated confusion and growing anger. What could possibly require more than intelligence to understand? Communication is about information transfer. Information is data. Data is processed by intelligence. This is fundamental logic that even humans should grasp. Lisa looked around at the alien faces staring at her. Some showed curiosity, others showed contempt. But all showed the same basic assumption, that intelligence was the only tool needed to solve any problem. None of them seemed to consider that maybe intelligence alone wasn't enough. "What about wisdom?" she asked. "What about understanding? What about empathy? What if the ancients built their language to be understood by beings who could think with their hearts as well as their minds?" The aliens made various sounds that the translators converted into laughter, but it was the kind of laughter that adults make when children say something both cute and impossibly naive. "Hearts do not think, Dr. Martinez," Kexthul said with the patience of someone explaining basic facts to a slow student. "Hearts pump biological fluid through circulatory systems. Minds process information. This distinction is fundamental to rational thought. The human tendency to confuse emotion with cognition is well documented," added Rithendal. "It is one of the primary limitations of your species' intellectual development." Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach. These beings weren't just dismissing her ideas. They were dismissing the very qualities that made humans unique. Their capacity for empathy, creativity, and emotional intelligence was seen as primitive weakness rather than potential strength. Captain Harrison stood up beside Lisa. "I think we should get back to our quarters. We still have 2 weeks before we reach Ancient's Rest." As the humans walked away from the library, Lisa heard the aliens resume their conversation in their own languages. She didn't need a translator to know they were discussing how amusing it was that humans thought feelings could solve intellectual problems. Over the following days, Lisa continued her research despite increasing harassment from the alien scholars. They would interrupt her work to ask condescending questions about human methods. They would schedule important meetings during her sleep cycle, effectively excluding her from expedition planning. When she tried to contribute ideas during the few meetings she could attend, they would dismiss her suggestions without consideration. Pete Collins faced similar treatment in the engineering sections. The alien engineers would give him busy work while discussing the real technical challenges in languages he couldn't understand. Amy Foster found herself excluded from biological research teams who claimed human knowledge of life sciences was too primitive to be useful, but Lisa kept working. She spent hours studying not just the symbols from the ruins, but the materials they were carved into, the way they were arranged across the planet's surface, and the relationship between the symbols and the natural. Ancient's Rest appeared on the view screen like a dead gray marble floating in space. The planet had no atmosphere, no weather, no signs of life. But as the starbound Unity moved closer, Lisa Martinez could see the structures that had puzzled galactic civilization for over 1,000 years. Massive crystalline towers jutted from the planet's surface like frozen lightning strikes. They twisted and curved in impossible directions, some reaching up into space itself. The structures were made from materials that shouldn't exist according to known physics. They glowed with soft light that had no visible source and cast shadows that moved independently of any sun. Captain Jake Harrison stood beside Lisa at the observation deck as their shuttle prepared for landing. "It's bigger than I expected," he said quietly. Lisa nodded, unable to speak. The ruins covered continents. Every mountain, valley, and plain was carved with symbols that sparkled like jewels embedded in stone. From orbit, the entire planet looked like someone had turned it into a massive book written in light and crystal. "Dr. Martinez," came a cold voice behind them. Kexthul approached with several other Vorthok scholars. "I hope you brought comfortable walking shoes. You will need them while the rest of us solve this mystery." The shuttle bay filled with beings of every shape and size as the expedition prepared to land. Lisa watched the alien teams organize their equipment. The Zephyrians brought harmonic resonance chambers the size of small buildings. The crystalline entities had quantum processing matrices that hummed with power. The insectoids carried translation devices that clicked and buzzed as they analyzed data streams. Each alien species had brought their most advanced technology. Machines that could process information faster than entire human civilizations. Computers that could analyze every possible meaning of every possible symbol combination. Translation matrices that contained the linguistic knowledge of 1,000,000 different languages. Lisa looked down at her simple datapad and basic analysis tools. Compared to the alien technology around her, her equipment looked like stone knives and bare skins. The shuttle landed on a flat area between two massive crystal towers. As the doors opened, Lisa felt the strange atmosphere of ancient's rest wash over her. The air was thin but breathable, filled with a static electricity that made her skin tingle. The gravity was lighter than Earth normal, making every step feel like a small bounce, but it was the silence that struck her most. Complete, absolute silence that seemed to absorb sound rather than simply lacking it. When Jake spoke to her, his voice sounded muffled and distant, even though he stood right beside her. The expedition spread out across the landing site, with each alien species claiming different areas for their research. The Vorthix set up there. Logic engines in perfect geometric patterns. The Zephyrians arranged their harmonic analyzers to create sound resonance fields. The crystalline entities began growing quantum processing nodes that sparkled with imprisoned light. Lisa walked away from the organized chaos of the alien camps. She wanted to see the ruins with her own eyes before the advanced technology started its analysis. Pete Collins and Amy Foster followed her, equally curious about their first close look at the ancient mystery. The symbols were everywhere, carved into the crystal towers, etched into the rocky ground, even somehow embedded in the thin atmosphere itself. They shifted and changed as Lisa watched, not physically moving but seeming to cycle through different meanings depending on the angle of view and the quality of light. "It's beautiful," Amy whispered, her voice barely carrying in the strange atmosphere. Lisa knelt down beside a group of symbols carved into what looked like black glass. Up close, she could see that the material wasn't really solid. It seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, with the symbols appearing at different depths depending on how she focused her eyes. "The scans from orbit didn't show this," Pete said, pulling out a scanner. "The material is shifting between different quantum states. No wonder the translation attempts failed. The symbols themselves are changing while they're being analyzed." Lisa stood up and looked around at the ruins stretching to the horizon. The alien teams had started their analysis, filling the silence with the hum of powerful machines and the sounds of multiple species working with intense focus. But something felt wrong about their approach. "They're treating this like a code," she said suddenly. "What?" Jake asked. "Look at them. Every team is focusing on individual symbols or small groups of symbols. They're trying to break the language down into component parts and rebuild it from the bottom up. But what if that's exactly the wrong approach?" Lisa walked to higher ground where she could see more of the ruins. From this position, she could see how the crystal towers were arranged in patterns that extended for miles. The symbols weren't randomly scattered across the planet's surface. They followed the natural contours of the landscape, flowing like rivers of meaning across continents. "Jake, look at this." Lisa pointed toward the largest cluster of crystal towers. "The symbols don't just decorate the structures. They are the structures. The entire planet is one massive communication." Before Jake could respond, a loud humming sound filled the air. The Vorthec logic engines had powered up to full capacity. Kexthul's voice carried across the landing site through a translation amplifier, beginning comprehensive analysis of symbol. Cluster Alpha 77. Logic matrices are processing all possible mathematical relationships. Estimated completion time, 43 hours. Similar announcements came from the other alien teams. The Zephyrians began generating harmonic frequencies. That made Lisa's teeth ache. The crystalline entities started their quantum resonance scanning, creating fields of energy that made the air shimmer like heat waves. Lisa watched as the most advanced technology in galactic civilization turned its attention to the ancient ruins. Machines worth more than entire planets began their analysis. Processing power that could simulate the birth and death of stars focused on decoding the mysterious symbols. Hours passed. The alien teams worked with intense concentration, their equipment generating enough data to fill libraries. Lisa could hear fragments of their discussions as she walked among the ruins. Harmonic resonance pattern 7 shows no linguistic correlation, reported Velther. Quantum matrix analysis indicates non-standard symbolic relationships, announced a crystalline entity. Logic progression fails at symbol sequence 47. Beginning alternative mathematical modeling, stated Kexthul.by. The end of the first day, Lisa could sense frustration building among the alien researchers. Their advanced methods were producing mountains of data, but no useful translations. The symbols seemed to resist every attempt at systematic analysis. On the second day, tensions began to rise. The Zephyrians blamed the Vorthic logic engines for interfering with their harmonic analysis. The crystalline entities complained that the insectoid translation matrices were generating quantum noise. The gaseous collective accused everyone of thinking too rigidly. Lisa continued her own quiet exploration of the ruins. Without powerful equipment to distract her, she began to notice things the aliens missed. The way certain symbols appeared, only when multiple towers lined up from specific viewing angles. The way the carved patterns seemed to respond to emotional states, growing brighter when she felt curious and dimming when she felt frustrated. On the third day, she made her first real discovery. While sitting quietly beside a small crystal formation, she noticed that the symbols seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. When she focused on feelings of wonder and welcome, the symbols became clearer and easier to see. "That's impossible," Pete said when she showed him. "Symbols can't respond to human emotions. They're just carved patterns in crystal." But Amy Foster, the biologist, was more interested. "Actually, there are materials that respond to bioelectric fields. Human emotions create measurable changes in brain activity and electromagnetic output. Maybe the crystal formations are designed to interact with living consciousness." Lisa felt excitement building in her chest. The alien teams were treating the ruins like a mechanical puzzle to be solved through logic and processing power. But what if the ancient builders had created something that required a living mind to understand? Something that needed not just intelligence, but consciousness, emotion, and intuitive connection. That evening, as the alien teams continued their failing analysis, Lisa sat alone among the crystal towers. She let her mind relax and tried to feel rather than think about the symbols around her. Slowly, very slowly, she began to sense patterns that had nothing to do with mathematical relationships or logical progressions. The symbols seemed to be reaching out to her, trying to communicate something that required more than just intelligence to understand. Something that needed the very qualities the aliens had dismissed as primitive human weaknesses. As Ancient's Rest slowly rotated toward its dim sun, casting strange shadows through the crystal formations, Lisa began to realize that her human limitations might actually be the key to solving the greatest mystery in galactic history. The aliens had brought their most advanced technology to decode an ancient language. But maybe what the ancients had left behind could only be understood by minds that combined logic with imagination, intelligence with emotion, and knowledge with wisdom. The aliens thought their sophisticated methods would succeed, where 7 days had passed since the expedition landed on Ancient's Rest. Lisa Martinez sat alone in a remote section of the ruins, far from the noise and frustration of the alien research camps. The crystal formations here were smaller and quieter, creating a natural shelter from the strange winds that sometimes swept across the dead planet. The alien teams were struggling. Lisa could hear their heated arguments even from a distance. The Vorthik logic engines had failed to produce any meaningful translations. The Zephyrian harmonic analyzers had found no linguistic patterns in the ancient symbols. The crystalline quantum processors had generated nothing but contradictory data. Kexthul had announced that morning that their methods were being sabotaged by interference from inferior equipment. He was clearly blaming the human presence for their failures, though he couldn't explain how simple human tools could possibly interfere with advanced alien technology. Lisa ignored the distant arguments and focused on the symbols carved into the crystal wall before her. She had been sitting in this spot for hours, not trying to analyze or decode, just looking and feeling. The symbols seemed to pulse with gentle light, responding to her attention like flowers turning toward the sun. Then something changed. Symbols began to move, not physically but in her mind. They rearranged themselves into patterns that felt familiar, like half-remembered music or the rhythm of poetry. Lisa held her breath, afraid that any sudden movement might break the connection. Words formed in her consciousness, not heard with her ears, but understood directly by her mind and heart together. Simple words that carried complex meanings, like drops of water that contained entire oceans. "Welcome, children of the stars, we hoped you would come." Lisa's heart hammered in her chest. She had done it. After 7 days of failure by the greatest alien minds in the galaxy, she had achieved the first successful translation of the ancient language. The message was simple but profound, carrying layers of meaning that went far beyond the individual words. She reached for her datapad to record the translation, but stopped herself. The moment felt too sacred to break with technology. Instead, she continued to watch and listen with her inner senses, letting the ancient words flow through her consciousness. More symbols rearranged themselves into meaning. "We built this place for minds that could bridge the gap between thought and feeling, between knowledge and wisdom. We waited for beings who could think with their hearts as well as their heads." Lisa felt tears on her cheeks. The ancient builders had created their language specifically for minds like hers. Not the specialized, advanced intellects of the alien species, but the integrated, emotionally connected consciousness that was uniquely human. She spent the rest of the day in that quiet place, translating passage after passage of the ancient text. The messages spoke of a civilization that had transcended the limitations of pure logic or pure emotion by learning to combine both. They had built their language as a test, knowing that only minds capable of creative interpretation could understand their true meaning. As the dim sun set over Ancient's Rest, Lisa finally returned to the main camp. The alien teams were gathered around their equipment, voices raised in frustration and blame. Captain Jake Harrison saw her approaching and walked over to meet her. "How did your day go?" he asked. Lisa looked at her datapad, filled with translations that would change everything. "I need to call a meeting. Everyone needs to hear this." Jake studied her face and saw something that made him straighten up. "You found something." "I found everything." Within an hour, representatives from all the alien teams had gathered in the main meeting area. The space hummed with translation devices as beings of different species prepared to hear what the human had to say. Most looked skeptical, some looked annoyed, and a few looked curious. Kexthul spoke first, his voice cold with irritation. "Dr. Martinez, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but we have spent 7 days applying the most advanced analytical methods in galactic civilization to these ruins. If our techniques have failed to produce results, what could your primitive approach possibly have accomplished?" Lisa activated her datapad and projected the first translation onto the portable display screen. The simple words appeared in multiple languages as the universal translators worked to convert her meaning for each species. "Welcome, children of the stars. We hoped you would come." The meeting fell silent. Velther's skin patterns shifted rapidly, through colors that Lisa had learned meant confusion and disbelief. "Dr. Martinez, this is clearly fantasy. You cannot simply declare that ancient symbols mean whatever you wish them to mean. How did you arrive at this translation? Asked Shardake, the crystalline entity. What analytical method produced these results? Lisa looked around at the circle of alien faces, all focused on her with expressions ranging from skepticism to contempt. I didn't use analytical methods. I listened with my heart as well as my mind. I let myself feel what the ancients were trying to communicate instead of just thinking about it. The aliens made various sounds that the translators interpreted as laughter, but it was not friendly laughter. Kexthel's large black eyes fixed on Lisa with something like pity. Dr. Martinez, feeling is not a translation method. Hearts do not decode languages. This is exactly the kind of primitive thinking that we expected from your species. Then explain this, Lisa said, activating the next section of her translation. More text appeared on the screen, describing advanced technologies and star charts. That aligned perfectly with known galactic geography. Information about cosmic dangers that matched. Historical records of supernovas and black hole formations. The laughter stopped. Buzzkith, the insectoid researcher, leaned forward and made rapid clicking sounds. This information is accurate. These star positions match our historical astronomical data. The descriptions of quantum field manipulation are consistent with advanced physics, added a gaseous collective representative. Lisa continued projecting her translations. Page after page of coherent, consistent information that revealed intimate knowledge of galactic history, advanced science, and philosophical insights that impressed even the arrogant alien scholars. How is this possible? Velther asked, his skin patterns now showing colors that meant deep confusion. Our harmonic resonance chambers found no linguistic structure in these symbols. Our quantum analysis detected no information patterns. Because you were looking for the wrong things, Lisa said quietly. The ancients didn't build a language that could be decoded by machines. They built a language that could only be understood by living, feeling consciousness, by minds that could combine logic with intuition, knowledge with emotion. Kexthul stood up abruptly. This is impossible. Communication is about information transfer. Information is data. Data is processed by logic. There is no room for emotion in linguistic analysis. That's exactly why you failed, Lisa replied. You treated the ancient language like a machine when it was designed to be understood by living beings. The symbols respond to consciousness, to curiosity, to wonder and hope. They were meant for minds that could feel as well as think. Shardake's crystal body flashed with rapid light patterns that indicated intense processing. If this is accurate, it implies that our entire approach to linguistics is fundamentally flawed. We have assumed that intelligence alone is sufficient for communication. Maybe intelligence isn't enough, Lisa said. Maybe understanding requires more than just processing power. Maybe it requires wisdom, empathy, and the ability to connect with others on an emotional level as well as an intellectual one. The meeting erupted into chaos as alien scholars argued among themselves. Some demanded proof that Lisa's translations were genuine. Others insisted that their methods were superior and that human emotions were irrelevant to serious linguistic work. A few began to consider the disturbing possibility that their advanced civilizations had missed something fundamental about the nature of communication itself. Through it all, Lisa sat quietly, her data pad filled with translations that proved human consciousness was capable of achievements that even the most advanced alien technology could not match. She had succeeded where galactic civilization's greatest minds had failed, not despite her human limitations, but because of the unique way human minds combined heart and head, logic and intuition, knowledge and wisdom. The aliens who had mocked her primitive methods were beginning to realize that sometimes the most sophisticated technology is no match for a mind that knows how to listen with both intelligence and compassion. Lisa had cracked the greatest linguistic mystery in galactic history by using the very qualities they had dismissed as weaknesses. Her success was about to change everything the galaxy thought it knew about intelligence, communication, and the true meaning of being civilized. 3 days after Lisa Martinez's first successful translation, the ancient ruins of Ancient's Rest hummed with new activity. The alien scholars had finally accepted that her methods worked where their advanced technology had failed. Now they gathered around her daily, watching as she decoded more passages from the mysterious language that had stumped galactic civilization for over 1,000 years. Lisa sat in the main research area, surrounded by beings from 12 different species. Her simple data pad looked tiny compared to the massive alien equipment that had been pushed aside to make room for her work. The irony was not lost on anyone present that the most primitive tools in the expedition had achieved what quantum processors and harmonic analyzers could not. "The next section is longer," Lisa announced, looking up from a crystal formation that sparkled with embedded symbols. "It's going to take some time to translate properly." Kex Thul leaned forward, his gray skin pale with exhaustion from days of watching his life's work crumble before his eyes. "Dr. Martinez, we have confirmed the accuracy of your previous translations. The star charts match our astronomical records perfectly. The scientific information describes technologies that our own civilizations have only recently developed." "How did the ancients know so much about galactic history?" Lisa smiled softly. "They didn't know the future. They were testing whether whoever found their ruins could understand the past. Every piece of information they included was designed to prove that the translation was genuine, not guesswork." Velthor's skin patterns shifted through colors that Lisa now recognized as deep confusion mixed with reluctant respect. "But how is your translation method even possible? Symbols cannot respond to emotions. Language cannot require feelings to decode." "That's what makes this so amazing," Lisa replied, turning back to the crystal wall. "The ancients didn't just create a language. They created a communication system that requires the reader to be fully conscious, fully alive, fully engaged with both mind and heart." She placed her hands on the crystal surface and let her consciousness open to the ancient message. The symbols began to rearrange themselves in her perception, forming words and concepts that carried meaning far beyond their simple appearance. "They called themselves the predecessors," Lisa began, her voice taking on a distant quality as she translated in real time. "They were the first species in this galaxy to achieve true civilization. Not just technology or intelligence, but wisdom." The aliens listened in complete silence as Lisa continued. They watched as other species developed and grew. They saw beings of incredible intelligence create amazing technologies. But they also saw something troubling. Every species became specialized. The Vorthic focused on pure logic. The Zephyrians perfected harmonic communication. The crystallines mastered quantum processing. Each species developed their greatest strength, but in doing so, they lost the ability to truly understand others. Shardake's crystal body pulsed with light. "What do you mean, lost the ability to understand others?" Lisa looked up from the symbols, her eyes bright with the excitement of discovery. The predecessors realized that true understanding requires more than just intelligence. It requires empathy, imagination, the ability to see through someone else's eyes and feel with their heart. Each galactic species became so focused on their own way of thinking that they couldn't really connect with minds that worked differently. She turned back to the crystal wall, where new symbols were forming in response to her attention. So the predecessors designed a test. They built these ruins and created a language that could only be decoded by minds capable of combining multiple types of thinking, logic and intuition, analysis and creativity, knowledge and wisdom. "But why?" asked Buzz Kith, the insectoid researcher. "What was the purpose of this test?" Lisa's hands moved across the crystal surface as more ancient text revealed itself to her consciousness. They were looking for a species that could become true galactic stewards, beings who could unite different forms of consciousness instead of letting specialization create division. They knew that eventually, the galaxy would need guides who could bridge the gaps between different ways of thinking. The implications of her words settled over the gathered aliens like a heavy blanket. For centuries, they had competed with each species convinced that their particular gifts made them superior to all others. The Vorthek believed logic was supreme. The Zephyrians thought harmonic communication was the highest form of intelligence. The crystallines were certain that quantum processing represented the peak of consciousness, but the ancients had been looking for something else entirely. Not the most advanced species, but the most balanced one. Not the strongest in any single area, but the most capable of understanding and connecting with others. The predecessors left more than just messages, Lisa continued, her voice growing stronger as she decoded the final sections of the ancient text. They left coordinates, the location of their greatest gift to the galaxy. She projected the star chart that had appeared in her mind onto the portable display. The three-dimensional map showed a route to a system at the edge of galactic space, marked with symbols that pulsed with promise and mystery. "What's there?" asked Captain Jake Harrison. Speaking for the first time in hours, Lisa's eyes were bright with tears as she read the final passage. Everything they learned about bringing different species together in peace. Technologies for communication that bridge any gap between minds. Techniques for solving conflicts without violence. Methods for sharing knowledge across species barriers. The complete guide to becoming a truly civilized galactic community. The alien scholars sat in stunned silence. For over 1,000 years, they had assumed that the predecessors' ruins were just another archaeological puzzle to be solved. They had never imagined that they were being tested, evaluated for their worthiness to inherit the ancient wisdom. Kexthel's voice was barely a whisper. "And humans passed the test." "Not just humans," Lisa corrected gently. "The test was designed to be solved by minds that could think in multiple ways at once. Humans happened to be good at that because we never specialized like other species did. We combine logic with emotion, analysis with creativity, science with art, but any species could develop these abilities if they chose to." Their skin patterns showed colors that Lisa had never seen before, something that might have been humility mixed with hope. "So what happens now?" Lisa stood up and looked around at the circle of alien faces, each representing a species that had dismissed human capabilities just days before. "Now we work together." The predecessors didn't leave their gift for humans alone. They left it for any species wise enough to learn that true strength comes from unity, not superiority. She walked to the center of the group, her simple human presence somehow commanding attention from beings whose individual minds could process information faster than entire human civilizations. "The message is clear," she continued. "The galaxy doesn't need one species to rule over all others. It needs all species working together, each contributing their unique strengths while learning to value the gifts that others bring." The predecessors were waiting for the moment when competition could transform into cooperation. Over the following days, as news of the successful translation spread throughout the galaxy, Lisa found herself at the center of a revolution in thinking. The species that had once mocked human linguistic abilities now requested human advisors to help them develop more balanced approaches to communication and understanding. The location revealed by the predecessors became the site of a new kind of galactic council, one focused on cooperation rather than competition. Lisa was appointed as the first director of interspecies understanding, a position that would have been unimaginable just weeks before. But the greatest change was in how the galaxy viewed intelligence itself. The aliens who had once believed that advanced technology and specialized thinking were the highest achievements of civilization now understood that true wisdom required something more. The ability to think with both head and heart. the courage to combine logic with compassion, the wisdom to see strength in diversity rather than superiority and specialization. As Lisa stood before the largest crystal formation on Ancient's Rest, reading the predecessor's final message to a gathering of representatives from every known species, her voice carried words that would reshape galactic civilization forever. Unity through diversity, strength through understanding, wisdom through the courage to see beyond your own reflection. The beings who had once dismissed human language as primitive now listened with respect and wonder as those same vocal cords carried the message that would guide them into a new age of cooperation and peace. In the end, humanity's supposed weaknesses had proven to be their greatest evolutionary advantage, and the galaxy was better for it.